Welcome to Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. I'm Peter Gross, co-host of the original Wild Kingdom with Marlin Perkins and Jim Fowler. You know, when Wild Kingdom aired in the 1960s and 70s, many of the episodes documented wildlife research efforts. Marlin and Jim accompanied scientists all over the world to observe animals and their natural behaviors. Some of the techniques you'll see in tonight's episodes are no longer necessary by today's standards, but the work is still just as important. Wild Kingdom took viewers to the far corners of the world and cultivated an appreciation for animals and their habitats. Marlin and Jim showed us the importance of preserving the natural world, not just for animals, but for our very own quality of life. And that's good news for all of us in the Wild Kingdom. So sit back and enjoy Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom right here on RFD-TV.
Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom is presented by Mutual of Omaha, people you can count on.
Welcome to Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. Exotic birds from far-off lands are fascinating. Yet, on our own continent lives one of the world's most interesting birds, the western grebe. Native to northern prairie states and Canada's lower provinces, the western grebe exhibits a wide variety of curious dances and rituals spectacularly performed during courtship and nesting. Recently, I was invited by Gary Nectarline, graduate wildlife biology student of Colorado State University, and Canada's Delta Waterfowl Research Station, to participate in a grebe behavior research program. To observe the wary grebes, we used a unique floating blind built to outwardly resemble a muskrat house. From inside, we could move very close to the grebes and other waterfowl without alarming them. The observations of Gary Nectarline provided data previously unavailable because of the difficulty heretofore of approaching the birds so closely. The study was made here in the 35,000-acre Delta Marsh at the southern end of Lake Manitoba, 78 miles northwest of Winnipeg. Here we were able to observe and analyze from uncommonly close range the amazing antics involved in what we call the dance of the grebes. This is just one portion of the vast, sprawling sea of phragmites, marsh grasses, and water which makes up the Delta Marsh. At first glance, it seems to be devoid of life, but actually, since this is one of the more important waterbird areas in all of North America, there's really a great deal to see. That's particularly true in the spring like this, when so many bird species are just beginning their courtship rituals. And the reason I've come here is to witness an annual natural phenomenon which few have ever before been able to observe closely. While primarily my interest lies in watching the activities of one of the most difficult of all water birds in the world to approach, there's first a good opportunity for me to see the courtship activities of some of the other birds in this habitat. From this temporary blind at the edge of the marsh, I'll be able to see the extravagant mating antics engaged in by the sharp-tailed grouse. These male birds have staked out small areas of territory which they guard possessively. Within these areas, they perform a ritual which attracts female grouse from surrounding areas. Territorial lines for this ritual are sharply drawn and rarely violated. The dance itself may be a substitute for aggression instead of actual fighting. which they seldom do. The sound of the ritual travels far, and no doubt attracted females will soon arrive. Unfortunately, one bird is startled into flight by my movement. I'd like to watch them longer, but it's getting close to the time when I'm to meet the graduate student here who is doing such important research on the western grebes. I'll be using a canoe to cover the mile or so I'll have to travel from here to where we'll begin the final approach to the colony of grebes, which have been engaging in their courtship rituals. The silence with which one can move in a canoe makes it one of the most ideal forms of transportation for observing wildlife. It's not often, for example, that one can so neatly surprise the American bittern, a shy bird preferring seclusion. It has a pattern of markings on throat and breast which act as camouflage amid the marsh grasses when it stands in this position. A member of the heron family, the bittern is almost always a solitary bird. This one has obviously seen me now, and becoming alarmed, undulates its long neck in a peculiar manner. Spring is ordinarily the only time toads get into water. Their throats swell into echo chambers to croak out calls. Females ready to lay eggs are attracted. After the eggs are deposited and fertilized in these shallows, the toads return to high ground. Nearby are a number of excited terns, flying and diving together rather actively over a stretch of open water. Perhaps I can get closer. My approach hasn't created any real disturbance. Small fish make up the bulk of the tern's diet, and the birds have located a concentration of minnows spawning here. This is the first chance I've had to observe so closely this particular species. These are Forster's terns, sometimes called sea swallows because of their deeply forked tails. Smoothly streamlined, they're uncommonly graceful birds, whether perched or in flight. The female performing the circling maneuver is giving a begging call, attempting to entice her mate to bring food. The same courtship action is already occurring close by on a floating mat of old reeds. The male bird has become excited by her begging, and he responds very quickly. The gift of one small minnow will not satisfy her, and the male goes for more. He may catch a dozen or so minnows in succession like this to carry back as offerings to her before she will have had enough. Her ingestion of these minnows without having to burn up her own energy to catch them may possibly aid in the development of eggs in her body. Now, I'll move on to participate in the unique grebe study I've come to observe. It was time now to meet Gary Nectarline and enter the muskrat house blinds in order that we might observe the grebes at close range. It isn't too much farther now through these marsh channels to where the rendezvous point is located. It's on some relatively firm and high ground, and there's very little of that available here in the midst of the Delta Marsh. My destination's just around this bank of reeds, but so far my approach has not been noted by the graduate student. He's Gary Nectarline from Colorado State University. Gary's with the university's Fishery and Wildlife Biology Department. He's been studying grebes here under auspices of the Delta Waterfowl Research Station and has constructed a means for close approach and observation of the grebes. Gary's just completed the finishing touches on his handiwork, and he's eager to show me how it has solved his problem. When first beginning his grebe research, he had difficulty getting anywhere near the birds. A blind was essential, but a stationary blind wouldn't do. He found the solution by building blinds to resemble muskrat houses, floating them on inner tubes. The blind is equipped with a small but adequate seat upon which to rest when the blind has been moved into good position for observation. The burlap flap is for covering the observation hole whenever necessary. Now, with Gary ready, it's time to put on the waders and give his unique blind a good testing. Gary takes care to ground the canoe well, so there'll be no chance of it drifting off during our absence. We'll not be needing it for a while. Waders are essential. The water's cool enough to become uncomfortable if exposed to it for long without such protection. With Gary lending a hand, the blind is soon in place and ready for use. Most of the water we'll be moving through today is only waist deep. As soon as we get in a little way, the inner tubes will support the weight of the blinds. We'll be heading to the left as soon as we pass this initial reed bank, and there's a pretty good likelihood that we'll see some of the other marsh life here as we move toward the grebes. We've gotten away from the wide open water of the bay, and now in this more protected reedy area, we're already encountering a small flock of coots. These birds look like ducks from a distance, but they're more closely related to the gallinules. Unlike ducks, they bob their heads distinctively while swimming. Soon, like the other water birds here, they'll be nesting among the cattails. Getting this close to a wily mallard suggests good luck in approaching the grebes.
A very common bird here is the red-winged blackbird, and this one's quite a handsome specimen with his scarlet shoulder patches. But there are related species here as well, such as the one to Marlin's right. a yellow-headed blackbird. Looks like this one's claiming a territory here in the cattails.
In a moment, we'll be entering the area where grebes have recently been active. Then we'll learn the value of these blinds. The grebes are here all right, and so far they're not in the least afraid. Moving slowly is essential. In doing so, we're able to move within mere yards of them. My, what a handsome bird. What we're seeing now is just casual activity unrelated to courtship. Grebes feed almost entirely on fish, often using their long, sharp beaks to spear them when they dive.
We're seeing this bird preparing to rest. First, the waving foot is tucked under a wing. The yawning action doesn't always precede sleep, but the head is normally tucked down for rest. Soon these grebes should begin rituals known as displays. The restless activity that's occurring out there now is the first sign that they're about to begin. In a very short while, we may be witness to one of the most fascinating series of actions in the entire world of birds.
In order to observe the many activities of the grebes and other birds of the marsh, we moved our blinds to a new position.
If we move our blinds to the end of this bay, we should be in the best possible location to view the social displays of the birds. A sense of growing excitement in these western grebes indicates it's about to begin. And when it happens to one, it spreads like a contagion to all the grebes on hand. This bird's call, termed advertising, serves to attract the attention of an unmated bird. Such a bird, hearing the call, may answer. If it does, there's a good chance the birds will come together for further displaying. There's another grebe who's begun advertising. As these cries begin rising from all over this area of the marsh, the pitch of excitement among the grebes increases. Based on their present actions, they're ready to begin a display called dip shaking. This happens when two strange birds meet. They threaten each other with heads low, dip the beak, and shake it. They look ready to attack each other, but won't. Fights with such bills would be dangerous, so possibly they release built-up aggression with what's called rushing. The display called rushing is where the excited birds partially spread their wings, arch their necks, and literally run on the surface of the water. And now, others have caught the fever of the display, and they do it too. A display often following a rush between two males is called barging. After surfacing from their dive, the two birds raise themselves on the water until their breasts are well above the surface, and they barge slowly forward, side by side, looking at one another. But the rushing in this area is not yet over.
Spectacular display of rushing has ended for today. But this natural phenomenon we've been so fortunate to witness does not really signify the end at all. Rather, it is the beginning, for courtship only begins with the dance of the grebe. The grebe research being done at the Delta Marsh and the Delta Waterfowl Research Station adds much to our knowledge of one of the world's most interesting birds. Through use of the floating blinds disguised as muskrat houses, scientists such as Gary Nectarline are methodically learning why western grebes and other waterfowl perform the curious courtship and nesting actions we have long observed but never really understood before. Next week, in part 2 of the Dance of the Grebes, we'll continue close-up observations of the grebes as they build their nests and raise their young. And we'll see other animals which share their marshy habitat. We'll also learn how such scientific research helps man pass on to his own future generations the great legacy of the wild kingdom.
Mutual of Omaha, people you can count on, has presented Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Mutual of Omaha, helping people find Medicare solutions for over 50 years. To learn more about plan options or how to protect your kingdom, contact us today.
Mutual of Omaha. Protect your kingdom.